This event is sponsored by the Innovation Group. I'm Carlin Carnahan, and I'll be your moderator today. We'll have 3 speakers with us today. Me, I'm Carlin Carnahan. I'm a research director in Cellent's insurance practice. Cellent is an analyst firm providing research and advice to senior executives in the insurance industry. And at Cellent, I cover core systems, technology trends, and best practices in insurance. Greg Birdsall has served as the Chief Information Officer at Hallmark Financial Services for the last 11 years. And his 27 years of experience in the property casualty industry includes both the vendor side and the customer side of the business and covers both carrier and agency broker specialties. Before he joined Hallmark, he worked for Lincoln Financial, The Travelers, and Equifax. Ben Moreland is a senior business architect at the Innovation Group with over 15 years of experience in the industry and 30 years of experience in IT. Clearly, he started very young. Prior to joining the Innovation Group, he worked at Cellent as well, focusing on data mastery, BPM, portal, rules, service-oriented architecture, and policy administration systems. And before Cellent, he was the Director of Enterprise Architecture over at The Hartford. At the Innovation Group, his primary responsibility is to drive business value into the insurer suite solution and help customers better understand the business value of analytics. I'm going to go ahead and start by talking about data itself. Data initiatives abound in the insurance industry. Most carriers out there have some kind of a data initiative in place. They're focusing their efforts on implementing reporting tools, analytic tools, and data repositories with all the tools that go with those. Now, the majority of carriers out there see data as mission critical. This comes from a survey that I conducted just about 2 months ago, so very recent data. And what you see is that when it comes to how important data is, the majority of carriers, 80% of the small, mid-size, and 70% of the large carriers say that data is mission critical, and nobody rated data as anything lower than highly important. Now, as a growing number of companies start to understand the value of their data as a key business enabler, they're starting to also seriously look into the added value of data governance. And some see it as a prerequisite for all data and information-related initiatives, ranging from data cleansing to the implementation of analytics. So data governance is an emerging discipline, and it includes a focus on data quality, data management, data policies, and a variety of other processes that surround the handling of data in an organization. I mean, the purpose is really to make sure that carriers have reliable and consistent data sets so that they can assess performance and make decisions. But although data is seen as mission critical, interestingly enough, data governance is not seen by most carriers as having a similar level of importance. Only 22% of the carriers said that data governance was mission critical, and 30% of all of the respondents said data governance only had medium or slight importance. Now, when it comes to managing data, there's a wide variety of goals that carriers have when it comes to, implementing these data initiatives. I mean, why spend a lot of money implementing data initiatives? Well, the primary goal for most carriers out there is to improve decision making. This is the #1 goal of 49% of the respondents. But following right after that is to gain unique insights. So first, let me get good data so I can make decisions about my day-to-day. But the second thing is let me find something that is very unique so that I can gain some kind of a competitive advantage and grow my book of business more appropriately. Carriers are also looking to improve management planning. Interestingly enough here, carriers generally don't see data initiatives as important for reducing regulatory fines. They don't really see it as important for improving their processes. So the whole goal of a data initiative really is intended to improve the business. It does show that for 2015, this again is very preliminary data. This is from a survey that we still have open, so hot off the press, not publishable yet, but I thought it would still be quite interesting to show you the insights. When you take a look at top areas of investments for carriers for 2015, you've got more than 60% of them that have some kind of a BI or analytic initiative that is in process and underway. And you've got another 15% or so that are planning to start a new process in 2015. A couple of other things around that: IT operational excellence initiatives, core system modernization, digital transformation, and innovation. So some very major areas that carriers are focusing on, but the most important one for most carriers in terms of where they are investing is in BI and analytics. Well, so what does that actually mean that they're investing in? Predictive analytics is most likely to be a new project for carriers. And here what we see is that about 25% of carriers are planning to launch a predictive analytics project in 2015, with another 20% or so that currently have a project in play. Although it's kind of interesting, 15% say, yeah, we're really not going down that predictive analytics path, nothing happening here. Master data management, 20% of carriers are planning to begin that kind of a project, and another 15% have it in play. And business intelligence, 20% are planning to begin a project that is specific to the reporting tools, and another 22% have a project in process. And so what you see is not only is it the area that carriers are investing the most in, but when it comes to the different avenues that they're looking at, business intelligence and analytics are, very, very high areas of investment for carriers. Now, what are they trying to analyze? What's the point of having this analysis? This is from a survey that we conducted a little bit earlier, but what you see is that when you lay out these different types of capabilities, the most important thing for carriers is pricing optimization, using analytics to try and do a better job of pricing the policies. And sometimes that's driven through predictive analytics and scoring, and sometimes it's simply being able to understand the overall results that you're getting in order to improve your pricing. We also see top priorities in underwriting, in management information, in CAT simulation, and in regulatory and compliance reporting. Now, when it comes to using this data, carriers face a lot of problems. The top challenge that carriers tell us they have is, frankly, is collecting the data and analyzing it quickly enough. And the second most biggest challenge is a fragmented data environment. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this shortly, with poor data quality being the third top issue. Now, regardless of the size of the carrier or the line of business, property casualty versus life and annuity, carriers report that these three challenges are the most significant. Now, the problems build on each other. A fragmented data environment makes it really difficult to collect that data quickly, and poor data quality makes it really difficult to analyze and use the data to make better decisions. Now, I do want to point out that only 35% of those who said data quality was a serious problem, only 35% had formal governance initiatives, and by contrast, 65% of those who reported no problems with data quality had formal governance programs in place. So what this shows us is that these challenges with managing data can be significantly mitigated by putting formal data governance processes in place. Now, large carriers, there are a couple of variations here. Large carriers are more concerned with a fragmented data environment than most, and that probably has to do with the fact that large carriers often have multiple policy admin, multiple claim systems, multiple subsystems. But they also report growing concerns about the growing amount of data and the growing amount of data in spreadsheets, spreadsheet hell. Mid-size and small carriers certainly report challenges with a fragmented data environment, but they also report a cultural resistance to understanding data issues, and they're reporting difficulties in finding value in the data. So some significant differences in what those data problems are depending on the size of the carrier. Now, when carriers report challenges with fragmented environments, it's because very few carriers have common customer data across the enterprise. For most carriers, the customer data varies by each application that it resides in. And so if the customer data changes depending on the line of business or the system that it's in, it's very difficult to get a single view of the customer. And it makes it very difficult to get unique insights or to make management decisions. And these, of course, were the top priorities of carriers when it comes to BI and analytics. 64% of those who said their data varies by application or line of business also reported fragmented data as a significant problem. And of those who said that customer data is common, only 20% of them said that fragmented data is a problem. So this huge challenge of having data spread out across the different applications is exacerbating the challenges that carriers have in terms of trying to get those unique insights. Mid-sized and small carriers are more likely to have common customer data across the enterprise than large carriers, and this might well be due to a simpler application architecture. Many property casualty carriers have replaced their core systems, and that typically does make it easier to get to the data. Whereas large carriers, as I mentioned, are more likely to have multiple versions of policy admin systems or other core systems, which makes the data challenge much more complex. Now, shared ownership of data is the most common model out there. Few carriers have a single part of the organization that owns the data. And when they do, these owners tend to be the business people. In most cases, though, IT jointly owns the data with a business or the line of business leader. And what this means is that business and IT alignment is critical. Now, it also raises the question, though, of what is the role of business in managing data and in managing data governance? Is data governance a business responsibility, or is it an IT responsibility? Or how do you share that management of the data governance? In fact, in many cases, what we find is that the business isn't actually very knowledgeable or aware about some of the different practices of data governance. Now, those who reported cultural resistance as a major challenge when it comes to data were a lot less likely to have shared ownership. So when data is controlled by a single organization, you're more likely to have cultural resistance to using the data. The CIO plays a bigger role in data ownership in P&C carriers. They're more likely to have shared ownership, and they're more likely to be the majority owner of the data. But when they do have a single person owning data, for a P&C carrier, it's most likely to be owned by the chief operating officer or followed by an individual line of business. Mid-size and small carriers typically share the ownership, and fewer than 10% of large carriers have single ownership of the data. So we asked carriers, if you are thinking about investing in data capabilities, or if you have planned investing in data capabilities, we asked them to rank by order priority what they consider to be the building blocks for success. The number one priority for most carriers when it comes to the building blocks of successfully managing data is the culture, setting up the culture of the organization to leverage data and creating an enterprise data strategy and roadmap. So about 50% of the carriers who responded to this particular survey said that that was their number one priority. The next most common priority was finding the data needed for analysis, figuring out which data would be most appropriate, whether it is internal or whether it is external. And the third most important priority is the skill set, sourcing the skills required through training, recruiting, sourcing, partnerships. One of the major challenges that carriers have is having the skill set necessary to analyze the data available. When it comes to managing data, carriers typically have several problems. The first problem is, what data should I use to analyze? Internal data, external data, can I get to my data? Is it clean? So these challenges of data ownership, data cleansing, data governance are very large challenges. But the second most important challenge is really having the skill set to understand how to handle that analysis. Most carriers don't have data scientists on hand, and so carriers are saying that sourcing the skills required to manage the data, to create models, to generate the appropriate reports is a significant challenge for them. And having that skill set is a big building block for success. And the fourth most important area when it comes to managing the building blocks of success for data really are the tools, finding the right tools to start looking at data. Using pilots, using trials, checking open source, looking at vended packages. That is the fourth most important building block for success. So carriers are saying, number one, setting up the culture of the organization to leverage data, becoming a data-driven organization. Number two, managing the data itself, assuring that it's clean, that they have figured out the internal versus external data to utilize. Number three, having the skills internally to the organization, whether it's training internal folks, whether it's through recruiting, whether it's sourcing, partnering. And then the fourth piece is finding the right tools that will make it helpful in order to do that analysis. So the final thoughts for this section really are that carriers are racing madly to implement data and analytics initiatives, investing heavily in a wide variety of areas, and they're doing this really in order to improve their decision making, especially in underwriting and in pricing. Now, the need for continued investment by insurers in BI capabilities is widely understood. It's a top priority project, whether that's predictive analytics, whether that is business intelligence and reporting, or whether it's a master data management program to really manage the environment and the infrastructure. A lot of investment in these areas. But carriers face a wide variety of challenges that make it very difficult to easily manage the data and very hard to move quickly with these data initiatives. So challenges including fragmented data environments, data sitting in unconnected repositories, a lack of skill set, cultural issues, and lack of governance processes. So as carriers continue to expand and proliferate this BI environment, frankly, so must the governance and control processes. You don't want to invest a lot of money in creating this amazing data program and then not have the maintenance of that data to assure that the quality of that asset remains high. So when it comes to CIOs, the next steps, keep it realistic. When you're launching an initiative like this, the first thing is that you need to understand it is going to take time. Start very small with some very small initiatives to begin to prove the concept. Develop a cross-functional approach to data and data governance. And this can be a little bit challenging in organizations that have cultural resistance. And so having a cross-functional approach is a good way to start. And then gain support for these data initiatives by focusing on communicating the benefits of data governance as part of your data initiative. It's not just about building the reports. It's not just about putting a data warehouse in place, but it's really around having initiatives moving forward that will keep your data environment clean. And so I would also recommend then that you prioritize the development of formal data governance initiatives along with your other data initiatives. The data that we have seen from the surveys from a variety of carriers would show that those carriers who have formal data governance initiatives in place report fewer problems with dirty data, fewer problems with fragmented data, fewer problems with cultural resistance. And so clearly there is a benefit to these types of initiatives. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Greg Birdsall for his section. Greg, I'm going to pass this on over to you now.
Thank you, Carlin. It's my pleasure to participate in today's session. Hi all, my name is Greg Birdsall. And as Carlin said, I'm the Chief Information Officer for Hallmark Financial Services. We're a specialty lines focused property casualty insurance carrier based in Fort Worth, Texas. Hallmark is a current customer of Innovation Group. Today I'm here to share some of our highlights around our strategy and the efforts to build an effective repository and put it to good use. Just a quick overview of our company. We are a publicly traded company. Specialty lines is our focus. We write 14 lines of business in all 50 states, 6 statutory companies. That all of that kind of factored together gives us a very interesting data challenges and data problems. We've got regulatory issues, statutory issues, and financial consolidation concerns as well. From our humble beginnings as a small personal lines writer back in the 90s, we're now a much larger organization. We've grown through acquisition, and we have a much wider focus. Our strategy had been to operate more in a join the club type environment, asking our acquisitions to keep doing what they're doing, just like they're doing it, just make money for us. And strategies worked and it's been effective in helping the operating units to maintain their sense of self. But it brings with it a very distributed information environment in terms of the location, source systems, data definitions, all of which effectively work against our ability to be timely with our results and to effectively leverage analytical processes across the enterprise. Information was accessible and understood by a very few data stars. These are people who know where the information is, what it means, where to find it, and how to put it together in some meaningful form to facilitate claims, policy, operating unit type reporting. The enterprise level questions require the data stars to mine the information from familiar systems, one in one unit, another one in another unit, and deliver what they believe has been requested. And then some other individual had to consolidate that information. Just as Carlin said, spreadsheet hell. That's where we have been. Automation has been used as much as possible to streamline the processes, but essentially it amounted to going through data analysis, transformation, consolidation, verification, and delivery for each request as reports come out, which is both time-consuming, error-prone. And so it really creates an ad hoc culture which thrives in spreadsheet help and perpetuates decisions being made based on anecdote, tribal wisdom, because people really just don't want to ask for something because it takes a long time to produce it. Things worked. We were able to produce the information. All of these issues kind of rolled up together screams consolidation. Bring it together, put some standards around it, some governance, as Carlin had mentioned several times. And don't get me wrong, the ad hoc process, information will continue. People will still ask for things that aren't readily available, and we're going to have to build it. So we're not thinking the solutions that we're putting together are all things to all people. What we did is we created a project. Around that project, we set up some goals. These aren't earth-shattering goals. They're pretty standard and basic to identify types of information that we would need to analyze from a financial, compliance, operational, overall management perspective. We identified some goals and objectives to help steer ourselves. These are the goals that you see on the slide here. While none of these are, as I said, monumental, they're critical for setting a consistent target so that we can continually go back and make sure that we are still on task, on target for what it is that we're trying to achieve. Insurance information-based business, so we gather a lot of information, transaction level information. Specialty lines companies do some pretty niche type business, and it requires us to do a great deal more analysis, and it puts quite a lot of responsibility at the underwriter's desk to make proper decisions so that we're not selling business that's going to end up hurting us in the end. We also realized that we didn't have enough resource to embark on an analysis process to build something specifically for Hallmark, nor did we feel we had to, given the number of solutions that are out on the market. The one true source of the truth, one source of the truth is the mantra that has helped push all of this forward, and that's what we're looking for in our solutions. Finally, we agreed to define our information as two big categories: common information and custom information. Indirectly allows us to take a sort of a bite-sized approach to each of our phases. We have a two-phase approach, implementing a common platform of information and then adding custom. I'll talk more about that in a minute. What you see here is a very simplified view of the architecture for our solution. This is what we came up with. We chose risk level information as our custom layer. If you really boil things down, insurance information at the highest level can be standardized quite readily. You've got policies, exposures, coverages, claims, and so forth, claimants, policy holders. It's when you start to get into the specific risks that the information starts to diverge, and you end up with brand new sets of information for the analytics that you would need. That's actually where the richness of the data lies when you start talking about trying to make good decisions. But when it comes to a lot of the other type of financial reporting that you can get from the warehouse, and just keeping up with where things are, which is one of the goals that we have for our project from a corporate perspective. Where's this business unit? Where's that business unit? How do we stand as a whole, as one unit, one company, if you will? We were challenged every day. The source systems on the left represent each of our business units and the feeding of the raw data into the warehouse. You see two feeds, one's common, one's risk. The warehouse is based on a foundation that we built around the Innovation Group Insure Analytics product. This is a dimensional database based on the Kimball Data Warehouse model that provides a very effective consolidation platform as well as a well-performing reporting model. It's very close to a presentation layer. It pushes a lot of the warehouse grunge up further along the chain, if you will. Our foundation also includes the development of the ever-important Enterprise Data Dictionary. So this is the beginning of the governance process, again, Carlin was mentioning. We have to have consistency in definition. As you acquire companies, people, they have different definitions. I mean, you go right down to written premium. You might have one business unit that includes certain financial components into written premium for their analysis, and other business units don't. We're looking at it from the perspective of one definition. The dimensional model also lends itself to the use of a cube and the development of a cube on the delivery side. That cube is a very versatile data element, and while they're static, they're very powerful for driving dashboards. One of the large goals we have in our project is to produce dashboards so that our executives, again, can keep up with what is going on in each of our business units. It also gives us, the tool I'm talking about, gives us the ability to dive into a more detailed type of data warehouse if we need to get some more number crunching done that you wouldn't typically do through a dashboard. I mean, not everything can be done through a dashboard. It's more of a one-time shopping area for data. So going into a little bit of the details around the analytics product from Innovation Group, we had some expected benefits, both short-term and long-term. They relate to the selection of the Innovation Group's Insure Analytics product. First, it delivers an actual database already designed to support the business of property casualty insurance. It's not a 100% complete solution, but it delivers the basic components, the common data from our previous slides, not the least of which is transaction level detail, a crucial feature for accurately reporting policy and claims financial information. The remaining, say, 10% or so is generally the ETL processing, and Hallmark needed a very solid process to gather information, make sure it was clean, make sure it was correct, and so that it can be fed into the warehouse. That was a much more custom process, something that we ended up having to develop ourselves, and we are currently in the process of developing it. We've also developed an Enterprise Data Dictionary, which, by the way, is no small task in a distributed environment such as ours. We're a federated organization, and culture is a big deal. Everybody, again, has their definitions of what they're doing, and they're not all the same. Over the long run, we're talking about a tool that's based on very well-known Microsoft technologies, making it much easier for clients such as us to assume maintenance responsibilities going forward if we need to. This is important to us because we were not really interested in having a umbilical cord to a vendor that time and materials expense every time we needed to make a change, and we know that from a data warehousing perspective it's more of a process rather than a single delivery. The strategy we've taken is, again, a sort of two-phased approach. We're looking at a foundation. So the details here on this slide revolve around the phases of our implementation. Put simply, we're installing the foundation itself, including no data, no particular outputs, followed by a set of executive dashboards in phase 2 with 2 full years of information. This will facilitate more of the making good decisions part of our deliverable. When you start to talk about the more heavy analytical processes to drive decisions at the desktop, you need a little bit more history. Trying to take baby steps or smaller steps at first, we really could not look at trying to load 15 years of history into our warehouse, but we probably will, and that will be a follow-on phase or project basically prioritized by our business. We also will have another phase to feed our accounting information. So if you could envision that all of the transaction level information is feeding into the warehouse, and each month the accounting department is interested in reporting our financials, and the vision for this process is that they are going to go get that information from the warehouse, thereby bringing consistency around both our financial reporting and our management level reporting. Everything sounds great so far, but we've learned some lessons along the way. These are pretty valuable lessons to us, nothing that, again, is earth-shattering, but there's a couple of things that really are mentionable. Executive support. That's not earth-shattering, but if you don't have it, you're going to fail. It's just the fact of the matter. The second item, a little more useful, I think. As with most projects, what you think you're being told is being needed by the business is often not what they really want. And so you have to try to figure out what that is, negotiate along the way. Critically important for data, critically important for reporting and providing good information to the business. A good analogy is a project manager and the team should consistently review the goals and tactics that you're using in providing a cyclical feedback into that. Oftentimes you'll hear that being a good project manager is being a good communicator. A lot of people think that means a good outward communicator, but in the terms of a data warehouse project, it's also an extremely good listener. Pay attention every time somebody says something, because they may actually be telling you what it is that you need to know to produce what they really want, even though they've said something before that may contradict it. We've also come to realize that IG has been a very good partner during this whole effort, especially the guys in the UK. I noticed that some of you are signed up. Guys, pat on the back to you guys. While some of you may believe that your staff can be successful building something from scratch, I advise you that what you end up with is not materially different from what you can actually buy off the shelf with a few customizations. We're a fairly small IT operation, although we're a $450 million company. To throw a lot of resource at something to build it from scratch, it's just not practical. We cannot possibly rival the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of man-hours that companies put into products like this, and we just have to be able to leverage it. And although it may be fun from a developer's perspective, it doesn't make business sense. And finally, always forge ahead, always look forward. We're going to make mistakes. Again, to chime in on Carlin's message, it takes time, and the time itself has to be managed, expectations have to be managed, but going back to your goals, going back to your objectives regularly, every week, every other week, making sure that you're factoring in what it is you're trying to get done. We've been surprised, and everybody would be surprised how many adjustments you would make, and you're still not diverting from your original goals. That's the slides that I have, Carlin. I think I'm at the end, so I'm going to turn it over to Ben. He has a few additional items too.
Thanks, Greg, and over to Ben.
Thank you, Greg, for sharing your insights and your initial journey with what you've been doing in the whole data and analytics space, and especially the partnership that we've been working for. And to Carlin for setting the foundation. I'm going to be talking more about the data mastery journey, what it takes to move forward. And as has been mentioned, a lot of analytics and BI is about improved decision making, adding clarity, driving growth. But one of the issues that a lot of our customers that we hear is they are making decisions today on stale, outdated, untrusted data. And one quote from one of our clients before we began working with them was, running operations on static monthly management information is the equivalent of trying to steer your car by looking in the rearview mirror. It's very, very difficult, and it's not very effective or very efficient, as Greg was alluding to. One of the things that we developed at Innovation Group is our Innovation Data Mastery Maturity Model. And this serves two purposes. First, it helped us better communicate with our customers and potential customers on what they meant. A lot of insurers, when you talk with them, will use reporting, BI, analytics, predictive analytics, and they all mean different things by the same terms, similar to Greg's comment that, for example, earned premium, one group may mean it with fees and another group may mean it without fees, yet they still just say earned premiums and assume that everybody is understanding it to be the same thing. And that's just not the case. So the second thing that this helps is for companies to develop a long-term data and analytics strategy and roadmap. Because it's not a one-time thing, as Greg alluded to. It really is a long journey that is going to take a while to be able to start to really realize the true benefits and put your company where it is you want to be. Now, everyone focuses usually on the solution, the technology, your tools, the BI platform, but that's just one aspect. And even if we all could agree that one vendor solution is the best one out there, it won't provide you the maximum value if you don't look at 4 other characteristics or aspects of the data mastery space. And the first, we've heard Carlin mention it and Greg, and that's strategy and governance. If you don't have a single direction the company is going in, everybody is going to be splintered and going off in different directions and basically be where a lot of carriers are today. Also, along the organization management resources, do you have a single sponsor? Is everyone marching to the same drummer? Are you leveraging your expert resources across the enterprise, the data stars, as Greg was referring to? Data integration. Obviously, you're going to have to start to leverage data both internally and externally, and even internally from multiple sources. In some cases, sources that you may not be used to or even thought of. We're seeing a lot more work in the unstructured data analytics that's going on. Not external data, data that you have in your core administrative systems. Data quality. How good is your data? Can you trust it? The old saying, garbage in, garbage out. You don't need to have 100% good data, but you do need to focus on having good data that is driving the analytics and metrics which you drive your business. That's the data that you have to trust and has to be quality data. As you move forward, you can continue to improve, going right back to the source of the data to make sure that you're starting with good data at the very beginning. Now, there's 5 levels to this maturity model, similar to the CMMI. And most of our customers self-assess them, not us, but they self-assess themselves at level 1, the data chaos level. A lot of distributed data fiefdoms, no centralized strategy, everyone kind of doing their own thing. We feel a healthy organization is at level 3. Level 4 and 5 are for the leaders. There's an additional investment. Most carriers aren't going to want to be at these because the return on investment to them it isn't going to be worth it. But there are some, the Geicos, the Progressives, they want to be known as trailblazing, setting the standard by which everyone else is marching to. So they clearly would be aiming to be at that level. But if you're not at level 3, eventually you're going to start to find issues with fines and compliance, et cetera, and just not being able to compete, to be honest. This data mastery maturity model is part of a white paper that you can download from our North American site at innovationgroup.com. In addition, you can also send me an email. My email will be available in the last slide, and I'll be happy to send it to you. The interesting thing about the maturity model is you'll see that there's no reference to our product or even insurance for that matter. It can be used across any industry. Now, we start looking at data mastery, mastering your data, gaining business insight from the data that you have available, both internally and externally. It obviously starts with your data sources. For us, our own insurance policy and claims data systems. It could be another vendor's policy or legacy claim system, as well as any other structured data. This is going to be modified and extracted, transformed, and load from the source systems into a data warehouse to be leveraged. Now, as Greg had mentioned, and Carlin as well, you can't just move the data from the source systems. You need to put some data governance around that so you get common semantics. And that's, as Greg has said, that's probably the biggest effort, is getting everyone to mean the same thing. I know of one carrier that had 17 different definitions of policy in different systems. And it really didn't make sense to bring it all and just assume that they were all the same, because they were 17 different. So they had to map differently into the data marts and data warehouses that were being used. Once you've defined that, you're going to move it into a data warehouse. Now we have an insurance data model that is over 10 years in the making, and it's matured, which has now allowed us to come up with over 500 out-of-the-box analyses, reports, scorecards, KPIs for policy claims and the integration of policy and claims data. We then place this into cubes by adding facts and dimensions. As Greg had mentioned, our product is based on the Microsoft SQL Server BI stack. So our ETL is SSIS, the SQL Server Integration Services. Our cubes is SSAS. There's nothing really proprietary other than our data model and the pre-built facts and dimensions. But as Greg mentioned, we look to make sure our clients are as self-sufficient as they want to be, so that there's nothing proprietary, so that they can become totally standalone if they so desire. These cubes are now made accessible to the user, and our focus is on business users, as long as they have any laptop or desktop browser. We provide graphical capabilities, mapping capabilities, as well as just being able to see the underlying data itself with pre-built dashboards. Now, the other thing that we leverage as Microsoft improves their own product and adds more and more capabilities is some level of data mining, predictive analytics. Now, we are not a predictive modeling, predictive analytics solution, but Microsoft does provide some linear trending, some what-if analysis, some other lower-end predictive analytics capabilities that as they build those out, we will continue to take advantage of. Now, everything in teal is what we provide with our Ensure Analytics tool, but we feel this is not enough if you're really looking at the whole data mastery space. So one of the companies we've partnered with, Spatial Key, provides geospatial or location intelligent analysis, where you can do some what-if analysis in terms of cats, paths of hurricane, looking at your exposure, very graphically based, very powerful. It's not our sweet spot, but we feel it's important, and we've partnered with them, so out of the box, you can sign right into their systems. We're also able to and have integrated with or partnered with other systems, whether they be your GL system, other accounting systems. Excel still remains the #1 BI and analytics tool out there. There's issues with governance around that, but it is still the most widely used tool. We also can provide exports to simulation tools, to predictive modeling solutions like SPSS or SAS, or any other downstream tool, or even an enterprise data warehouse if so desired. A lot of talk around unstructured data, big data, as tools come out and start to put metadata and more data around those. Google, I believe, even said in the future there won't be anything unstructured, because there'll be so much metadata that is able to be incorporated, such as the location, the time, etc. But as that data is given some sort of structure, it can be fed back into our solution and then further analysis done. So this is basically our system. I'm going to end here and turn it back over to Carlin for Q&A.
Thanks so much, Ben and Greg. Those were both really good sessions. You know, I have to say that data mastery model, the data master maturity model, looks particularly interesting, and I would encourage everybody on the call to go in and download it, because I think it can provide you with some good ideas about how to assess where you're at and how to determine where you want to be and how to get there from there. What we're going to do now is we are going to respond directly to questions from the audience, and we have already received several. So here is our first question. Greg, this one is for you, and the question is, are you seeing any real benefits yet from your analytic initiative, and can you share any examples, and do you expect a bigger impact in claims or in policy? So really looking for what sort of benefits are you looking for here?
Well, we don't expect the foundation phase to be completed until the first quarter, so we don't have it in production. We're not actually using it on the floor. However, I would say that we've seen benefits in helping our business leaders to see the importance of consistent definitions back to the data dictionary. The development of our data dictionary has driven some very interesting conversations around who we are, how we are organized, why, and who do we want to be. Not unlike what happens when you attempt to build an externally facing website. You start to have those conversations, among a group of business leaders. At this point, we believe that the impact will be centered primarily around the combination of both policy and claims information. We want to be able to give timely management reporting to our executives and to support the improved actuarial pricing, as well as eventually driving underwriting decisions. We'd like to get to actionable analytics out to the desktop. Those are the primary expectations.
Fantastic, thank you. The next question is for Ben. Ben, has anyone been integrating analytics back into the core admin systems, policy admin, claims admin? The data mastery diagram didn't really show that integration. Is it part of data mastery, or is it complementary to data mastery?
Excellent question. We view it's part of data mastery. Even as carriers are taking this journey, so are the vendors. We may have agreement in terms of how things should be done, but getting to that point where you're taking data from your analytics BI tools and incorporating it back into your policy claims billing systems. As Carlin mentioned earlier in her survey, over 80% say that they're looking to get improved decision making. And so there's two ways in which that can be done. One is to provide the data to the users themselves who are making those decisions through improved UIs. And the second is straight through processing. And I know that a number one or a top priority at Innovation Group is to start to leverage some of the analytics we have back into our policy and claims system. Can you do this across vendors? I think the integration becomes more challenging, but I also know some of our competition is also looking at doing this who have it. So I think that vendors are going to start to come out with some of this, but it'll be mainly giving the users the right information to make better decisions at that time in the process.
Terrific. Okay, we've got another question here, and I think this might be for Greg, although Ben, maybe you could chime in on this as well. Where are you seeing the need for real-time reporting or analytics? How current are you reporting on today? How current are you expecting to report on once you finish this initiative that you're in the middle of? What is your management hoping to achieve when it comes to real-time?
Well, we'd like it to be real-time. That would be great if we could get the information in an understandable format that quickly. At this point, though, I mean, we're trying to be realistic about it with the multiple systems and all of the translations that go along around it and all of the vetting of issues and whatnot when you are trying to cleanse your information. We're kind of shooting for weekly loads, perhaps even every other week initially. And it just depends on the issues that we run into as we go forward. But as with everything else, any type of load process, it's going to solidify. It's become more predictable. So we would look for daily loads eventually. At this point, the information is already available at the monthly frequency at the operating unit level, or actually much sooner than that. But corporately, you have to wait until after the information is consolidated into our financials before the enterprise really has an understanding of where everybody is.
Terrific. And Ben, as you work with clients out there in the field, what level of currency are carriers typically looking for, and what level are you typically implementing? Help me understand this whole real-time reporting, daily, weekly, hourly?
Yes, it's another really good question, but and where a lot of carriers and people in the industry get confused is reporting and analytics and really operational reporting. We also provide operational reporting, which we really didn't discuss, and it wasn't part of this discussion. It was more on the analytics. But their operational reporting, there's a lot of companies that can do this on a daily basis to be able to help with their operations. But to Greg's point, it's pretty much common that most carriers that we talk with at the corporate executive level are looking at data that is 4 to 6, in one case even 8 weeks old, and very difficult at that senior level to make decisions that affect today's business when you're dealing with data that's out of whack. So I think that every carrier would love to have real-time data. I just don't think that we are there yet in the integration of that data into the users and the real-time, the users of the systems. But I'd say that people are now moving towards weeks for the corporate data as the more modern solutions come out.
Yeah, that's terrific. I mean, there's always this idea that we'll have all the data we need at our fingertips immediately, but there is a question of how much do you really need that immediacy? Is it worth paying the additional price for it? Certainly some aspects it is important to have that immediacy, and other aspects can wait. So as you implement a data project, important to think through some of those critical issues as you roll through the implementation. Here's our next question. I think this one is for me. Do carriers with formal data governance programs get better results than those with informal programs? Yes. Okay, we can move on. No. Yes, carriers who have formal programs report significantly fewer problems with data quality, report fewer problems with fragmented data, report that they are able to do their analysis faster, better, quicker. So there certainly is terrific value to having a formal initiative. Not every carrier is going to be in a position, though, to launch formal governance initiatives. And so for many CIOs, the challenge is to try and create more informal governance initiatives, which also can have a significant benefit, certainly more than no initiative at all. When we ask carriers which governance initiatives generate the most value, most of the carriers say that they're getting significant value or some value from a data quality initiative. So if I were considering where to begin, I think that's probably where I would begin, a data quality initiative, and followed by that a data governance council or a centralized data governance team, having people that are held responsible for this. Master data management initiatives are certainly generating value for carriers, so it certainly is an area that is generating good results. The next question that we have, let's see, is for Ben. Reporting, BI, predictive analytics, it's such a large space. It can be overwhelming. There are a lot of solutions, and a lot of vendors really can't address the whole space. If you were a mid-tier carrier, what are your suggestions around where to start?
Yeah, so it is a very large space, and it can be very daunting, as I mentioned before. People are even making it more confusing by using the same term and meaning different things. Where I would first focus is, just like Hallmark did, what is it you want to address? And for them, it was risk. For someone else, it might be claims fraud. For someone else, it might be pricing. Really have a focused direction, and again, to Greg's earlier point, have executive buy-in so that you know you're going to stay on that focused area. Next, I would look at something like our data mastery maturity model or something like that that helps you plan out where you want to be and how you may want to be there, as well as being opportunistic in terms of what programs you have that can help you move forward. And then finally, Greg had said it, find a good partner, whether it be us or anybody else. First, find someone who is in your space. If you're a property and casualty carrier, find a vendor who has an insurance model focused on property and casualty. If you're life or annuity, same thing. Find a vendor that has experience and a data model in that area so they can give you that lift, and they can bring their experience to help you along. And then realize, finally, it is a journey. So that it's not something that's a 2-year, 4-year project. It's something that you're going to continue to do for the life of your company. As new tools, advances in technology come in, you're going to want to take advantage of them where appropriate.
Great, and I think we have time for one last question. I'm going to send this over to Greg. It's actually, we've received a couple of questions from this area, so I'm going to try and combine them. And the question is, are you using the initiative that you have in place now? Are you really focusing on fixing things that are currently costing you money? Or are you looking to use this data to grow your book of business? And are you planning additional analytic work once you've passed that implementation?
Yes. Next question. No, absolutely. We don't really see any expense savings with the particular solutions that we're moving forward, but we do see indemnity savings in the way of pricing, effective pricing on insurance. We're trying to price it properly We would look for fraud, as Ben just mentioned, and some productivity measures that we might use to help us better organize our work and our operational effectiveness. But when it really comes down to is making proper underwriting decisions, proper claims decisions, so that we don't leave money on the table, if you will, as where the dollars and cents of it are.
Fantastic. And unfortunately, that's all the time that we have today. I would like to thank everyone for joining us today for our webinar on Data Everywhere, Hallmark's Quest for Insights, and hope that you found the session valuable. I would especially like to thank Greg and Ben for taking the time and sharing their insights with us today, and a special thank you to the Innovation Group for sponsoring this event. On behalf of the Innovation Group, thank you for being here with us, and have a great afternoon.